You're listening to In the Chair, a podcast for Freemasons in England, the UK and around the world. Find out more at masonicpodcast.com. But first, welcome your host, Robert Bone.
Hello there, good morning, good afternoon or good evening. I hope you're having a great day whenever and of course wherever you're listening to this. And although I'd initially come up with this idea for Masons, probably based within England and around the UK, of course we were chatting to someone in Scotland the other day, I'm really amazed to find out that so many people around the globe actually listen to this podcast, and it really does demonstrate how the brethren are spread all over the surface of the world. So that is really touching for me. And so thank you very much to all the listeners and everyone who does actually listen in. It genuinely is appreciated. When I started this, and we're now up to episode 6, when I started this, I genuinely didn't know if this was going to work at all. And I'm just absolutely staggered that people do actually listen in, and every day more people are downloading it, more people are recommending it, more people are subscribing to it. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate every single one of you, and of course all those people that send me messages via Twitter, send me emails. I've even had phone calls from brethren in my lodge going, wow, I didn't realise it actually sounded quite as professional as what it does. I'm not a professional at this, so I do take any bit of credit that I can, to be honest. So thank you very much to everyone. But let's move on to today. Today is another interview with an author, and this time it's a chap called Craig Weightman. I spoke to him last week. He's a member of Athelston Lodge, number 1333, and that's actually meets in Warwickshire, which is in the Midlands in the UK. The reason I've got Craig on is, as I said, he's an author, and he's recently written a book called A Journey in Stone, and it really discusses and looks at the metaphor of Freemasonry and how it can be used as a personal development. And what's quite interesting is Craig actually studied as a psychologist and also as a computer scientist. So two quite distinct and unique ways of looking at Freemasonry. I'll tell you what, let's just jump straight in with the interview. So with me on In the Chair today, I have an author, Craig Weightman. He's written a book called A Journey in Stone. So, Craig, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much for asking. And you are on the In the Chair Masonic podcast today because you've written a book. As I said, it's A Journey in Stone. It's sounds quite interesting. It's a psychologist's assessment of Freemasonry as a path of self-development.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that Freemasonry to me has always been a journey. The 3 degrees of Freemasonry has always been a symbolic journey, and I guess Freemasonry has different points of view. People understand it from different points of view, historical perspectives, symbolic perspectives.
Right.
So I tend to look at it from a symbolic perspective to see how symbols can be interpreted and what they actually mean. Right.
So the actual sort of the meaning behind some of these, almost decoding some of it.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because your background, you done. I read that you actually done psychology, and
yes,
also
yeah.
Is it computer science as well?
Yeah, I did a degree at University of Leicester,
right.
Computer science and psychology. Yes, I've always had quite an interest in psychology and physics and computer science and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So you're kind of really coming at things from quite a logical perspective.
Yes, it is a logical perspective. Yes.
Right.
Tends to be, yes.
So how did you really get into writing a book like this?
Well, I've been in Freemasonry since 2004, I think, and obviously when you move into Freemasonry, you're not really told entirely what it's all about. No. You sort of come into this, you come into Freemasonry, and you're not told about what these symbols are. And you kind of told at a surface level, but my curiosity kind of got the better of me, and I wanted to find out what these meant, and as much as I could read into it, because obviously you go through first, second, third degree, and so I looked at books and I really wanted to know what it was all about, and I started looking at it from the very symbolical sort of perspective, with all the symbolism,
Right.
On how it and if there's any psychological meanings. And one of my biggest influences actually was a chap called W.L. Wilmhurst,
Right.
who wrote a book way back in the 1800s, I think, who gives a very strong sort of psychological interpretation of the different offices in the religion, such forth.
Sure. Okay. Because I think one of the things that you've sort of drawn towards, which is quite often, I think, what people realise is about the ashlar, the stone going from the rough to the smooth stone. So have you kind of explored that in a bit more detail?
Yes, I've explored that. Really, the book itself it focuses on the working tools of Freemasonry, and that journey from the rough ashlar that gets symbolically taken from the quarry, and then gradually gets sculpted towards the perfect ashlar, which is the symbolic sort of representation of a Freemason having gone through Freemasonry. Also, an inspiration, that really led into the book and the way that I was thinking is this idea of Michelangelo and when he was carving the statue of David.
Right.
What happened was he according to legend anyway, he was sat there looking at this giant block of marble.
Right.
And one of his commissioners came over to him and said, well, you don't seem to be doing anything. You've just been sitting here for weeks now, staring at this marble. We've been paying you to do this.
Right.
What are you doing? He says, well, I am working. I'm just trying to observe the form within so that I can remove the stone and reveal it. And that kind of inspired me because that using the working tools in a metaphorical way, it kind of sculpts the Mason as they move through.
Yeah.
You see.
I think it's one of the things where I think when you first join Masonry, it's all just a bit of a blur. And it isn't until you really start going through the offices. And although technically in emulation ritual and most ritual is the working tools is officially meant to be the master's work, but it's normally something which is actually given to master masons starting to go through the offices to get them just do a little bit on the floor.
That's right.
And I think the great thing with that is it draws your attention to it. And then you actually focus on what the working tools are. You're not just learning the words. And suddenly you go, oh, okay. So although it's presented to you when you're going through the ceremonies, it's not really until you're presenting it to others that you start getting the hang of it. And then you realise, which then means that when you then start progressing through the offices, you have actually absorbed the lesson that you were first taught.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think that's, quite a good way. And it is a great metaphor, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It literally is a journey in stone. I mean, if you think of the Mason as the block of stone, they are, I guess, crafting themselves as they move through the craft. Yeah,
and a way. And I mean, going back to like how Michelangelo had the vision of the statue within the block of marble, he could see that he was removing the pieces to leave the statue in there. I think.
Correct.
And I guess the actual Masonic ritual is like that, where it's, okay, here's the bits and pieces, we can see it. You're probably not going to see it right away, but as you work your way through, you are going to reveal that. And actually, you said you're currently the master of your lodge as well, aren't you?
I am, yes.
And that's Athelston Lodge, isn't it? And that's 1333.
That's correct, yeah.
And in Warwickshire, I just thought, mention that. Actually, do you know if you have a Twitter account or anything for the lodge, if anyone is in Warwickshire and wants to visit one day?
Yes, well, I have a Facebook account, a Facebook page for the book.
Okay, and they can contact you through there.
Yes, they can. Yes.
And what's the Facebook page whilst you're there?
The Facebook page is called A Journey in Stone.
So facebook.com/A Journey in Stone.
Or search A Journey in Stone, you'll find it. Yeah.
I'll make sure as well. I'll pop the links in the show notes for the show as well.
Okay.
So I mean, it's one of the things I did actually notice as well is, although you can buy this book on Lewis Masonic, and also there's going to be, to make it easier for anyone who's listening and finds this interesting, if you go onto masonicpodcast.com/journey, that will actually link you directly through so you can purchase the book as well. So I'm going to set that up with an easy link, so masonicpodcast.com/journey. So anyone who's driving along at the moment, they don't have to be trying to make notes on their iPhone or something whilst they're stopping at traffic lights. But I did notice as well, on the book, that it says it's not just for Masons. I think that's maybe not so much for the Masons who are maybe the people that have gone through it a bit and now starting to research the history. It's very much aimed for Master Masons working their way through, and also as well for people interested in finding out about Masonry.
Yeah, that's right.
So was that a conscious decision on your part to sort of think, hang on, let's not just go for the fraternity, but maybe people interested in the fraternity?
Yeah, it was a conscious decision, because what I try to do is I try to not give too much away about the actual ceremony itself. Sure. Now, the thing is, what I present is an interpretation, is my interpretation really of what Freemasonry is, and so what I wanted to do is that there are many Masons who perhaps want to know a little bit more about what Freemasonry is or how it can be interpreted. So certainly from that angle, Freemasons themselves can perhaps get an idea, or perhaps get the juices flowing and the wheels turning, thinking about how Freemasonry might be, the symbols of Freemasonry might be interpreted. But on the other side of things, there's the non-Mason who there's all sorts of rumours and myths that go on about Freemasonry. So one side is to try and dispel those myths. And the other side is to give them an idea of what Freemasonry might be about, and that it is about kind of a developmental journey, an organisation that presents symbols for moralization, for speculation and meditating upon, if you like, thinking about, and in that sense, a way of sort of thinking about where you are in the world and how you relate to the world, and perhaps in some ways who you really are and what you can offer to the world, and those sorts of things.
I know, it's
as a broad perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Masonry is almost like an onion, where you take those layers off. And for some people, who just want to turn up and go along to their monthly meetings and do their little bit, sit on the sidelines, go to the festive board and have a fun time.
Yes.
But the more if you want to start taking layers off, the more you can find. So it sounds like this is like almost like a great, I'd say an intermediary book for the people that maybe know a bit already or want to find out a bit more. But sometimes some of the books, and I know I was chatting to Martin Fawkes a while back, and actually episode 2, if you want anyone wants to go back to listen to that, just go to masonicpodcast.com/2. That will link to the show notes. We're talking about various authors, and I know they've got about 300 titles at Lewis Masonic, and some of those can be very, very niche, is the best way. And people have spent a lot of time researching, but sometimes you actually just want to have get your feet in the water first. And it sounds like this is actually quite a good book to move things on for when you start thinking, I want to know more about what this is. Yeah. Well, to pick up and get this book.
Yeah, well, you'll probably notice if you look through in terms of references, there aren't many. In fact, I don't think there are any stated at all.
Oh, right, brilliant.
It really is a reflective of what I picked up through my reading and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to present it as a point of view sort of journey, and what I've picked up on my journey and on my path. So what I wanted to do is I realised that there is there's a lot of books that are based on history and a lot of research, very heavy research. But I wanted to move kind of away from that and have a more of an intuitive perspective, in terms of how you can move through Freemasonry and look upon things and give things your own interpretation. And so this is very much almost a journal of where I'm at so far in my thinking and
right. Because of course it's right staring right at me. You've called it a journey in stone, and it is a journey of almost a journal, your own thoughts and everything. And to be honest, I think everyone would admit that there's no one knows for sure exactly what is right. You can only do the research, and sometimes it depends what you're looking for. If you look for something, you'll normally end up finding it anyway.
That's right. Yeah,
I remember I have spoke to an author quite a while ago, Neville Barker Cryer, and he'd done a whole load of books, and I was asked him a question once. I can't remember quite what the question was, but I remember he almost had gave a wink in his eye and said, "Well, it could mean that anyway."
Yes.
After all this research, he was like, "Well, you can't really say one way or the other, to be honest." But that's what I think, and that's what which I think is one of the great things about Freemasonry. It is the interpretation of it. It seems so strict when you have the ritual that you're almost learning word for word. Yet when you start digging down, you can actually go in the direction you want to go in.
That's right.
And
Sorry. I think you very much bring yourself to Freemasonry rather than Freemasonry dictating to you what it actually is, and this is what it is, and look at the research, look at all the historical stuff. I think you bring yourself to Freemasonry, and you tend to look at it through your own eyes and through your own experiences and through your own way of thinking. So, yes, it's all very well and good doing the research about where it comes from and what were the inspirations of Freemasonry, but because it interacts with its members in such a way, there are different perspectives there, and and it's very interpretive.
Of course. Well, I think the bit on the dust jacket, so to speak, says. Goes through about a perfect guide for the newly made Mason who needs to keep his focus on the most important goal of our order. But part of that isn't maybe of the order, but of yourself, isn't it?
Yes.
It's finding out your own objective.
Yes, correct. Yes, and finding in Freemasonry some kind of a purpose for yourself, and and also Freemasonry is all about wide. Looking out on the wider view as well with charitable works and looking about how you're placed and how you can benefit mankind in a wide. But the most effective way you can do this, of course, is trying to understand yourself more. And I think Freemasonry helps to dig down, excuse the pun, but it helps you dig down and chip away at those bits and bobs to get down to the core of perhaps who you are and what you have to offer, and in that way, it can be more beneficial to mankind and to the wider society.
Yes, well, I mean, often quoted, they do say it's Freemasonry is to make a good man better. And,
yes.
Yeah, and I think, going, and as I said just now, and we said, the whole book revolves around it, of taking those ashlars and turning them from rough to perfect stones.
Yes.
Really, is actually, you can't think of a better way to sum it up, really, can you?
Well, I couldn't.
Well, you couldn't at the time, which is exactly why you went with it. And to be honest, you couldn't at the time, and nor could they when they first wrote the ritual.
Indeed, yes.
So I've got to say that. Well, I've got to say the book sounds absolutely fascinating. I'll just say again for the listeners, it's by Craig Weightman, and it's called A Journey in Stone. You can find it. It's put out through Lewis Masonic. And the quick link to find it is if you go to masonicpodcast.com/journey, that will actually redirect through so you can purchase that. So if you're interested in that, and everything will be, of course, linked through in the show notes. Craig, before we move on, I was going to ask you a few quick questions, if that's okay, about Freemasonry in general, if that's fine.
Okay. Yes,
feel free to answer what you can. Don't worry, everyone's been put through this so far, so don't worry. One of the things within the Chair podcast is it's nice to get authors on, nice to speak to different people, but I think one of the main things about Freemasonry is, of course, the people. And it's nice to find out the person behind, the person who I'm interviewing. And one thing that has amazed me is everyone has their own unique separate stories, yet everyone seems to have something that all ties them together. So I find this is a nice little way to find out about the people behind Freemasonry. So first is obviously the question is, why did you actually join Freemasonry?
I was curious. The story was I've sort of always been interested in Freemasonry and the idea of similar societies, and it all began when I actually a person I worked with. We were having a chat, and I jokingly accused him of being a member of the Funny Handshake Society.
Right.
But just as a joke, he said, "Well, I am actually," and then we started in conversation. I went. He invited me to ladies' nights and things like that, and I thought, well, this seems like something I want to be a part of. So I signed the forms, and I found people that would propose me and second me, and and the rest is history.
Before you know it, you're on that slippery slope.
Yeah, who really knows what Freemasonry really is?
No. Well, that leads me on to my next question, because it's one thing to say why do you join, but when you actually join, in reality, you don't really know what you're joining. That is the whole point of it. And one of the things at the moment I think is important with Freemasonry is retention, to keep people in Freemasonry. Yes. So I think it's important for people to ask why they join, but I like to know why people continued their membership. Why did you stay a Mason?
I stayed a Mason because of what is journaled in Journey in Stone. Actually, it's
right.
What I found was this philosophical perspective on life, and upon researching, upon reading, and all the stuff that I'd read, it led me into all sorts of avenues, sort of different areas of history and different perspectives on comparative religion and all sorts of things. And because of the way that I think and my interests and that sort of stuff, it's really stayed with me. So
Right.
moving through the lodge and moving through and experiencing the symbolism of each of the different positions in the lodge, and then moving to the chair and going through the chair, which that will be completed in December. I think that's really what's kept me in Freemasonry, and I'm just fascinated by the whole topic, really. I suppose.
I mean, I find it fascinating that actually someone's written a book about Freemasonry and they haven't even completed their year in the chair. That's. I mean, for me, that just shows you definitely have enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, definitely enthusiastic about it.
So, do you have any particular memorable experience of Freemasonry? And it might be something that has come about because of Freemasonry.
Memorable experiences. Well, I suppose the thing that really strikes out as memorable experiences in Freemasonry are the initiation ceremony that never really leaves you.
No.
And for me, the third degree, the raising ceremony, that's something that really strikes. That's something that's really nice and poetic, and there's lots of that. But also the thing that follows on, in a way, it's not a separate degree, but the Royal Arch. That's another thing that's a wonderfully sort of magical narrative, I suppose, not without the emphasis on magic there.
No,
but it's the idea that it's all this symbolism and
sure. It goes in a complete different direction, isn't it? But it's,
absolutely.
I mean, all I can really say is, all I'll say on here is there's the moment. And I think as soon as anyone who's gone through, in Royal Arch knows exactly what the moment is.
Yeah.
When they join. But someone actually said to me, they quite like Royal Arch and Chapter because it's a bit more Indiana Jones. Which wasn't quite how I'd explain it, but at the same time I can see how you're taking that out of it as well.
Yes,
there is that sort of aspect. So would you have any advice in particular for people thinking of joining Freemasonry?
Yes, I would say that if it's something that you're interested in, it's something I would definitely follow through and do, because it is an interesting organisation. There's philosophically, socially as well, and charitably. It's an organisation that really has, it really wants to do good in the world, both on an individual level and a grander scale as well. So to be part of Freemasonry is something that, it's definitely a good thing. So
I always think if it's something that you're interested in and you're thinking perhaps I should, that really is the sign of perhaps you should.
and there is nothing really that should put you off. Don't not to listen to any rumors or myths or anything like that, because it's everything that you experience is completely benign, and there is absolutely nothing to worry about at all.
You wouldn't have as many people who are Freemasons if there was some of those things.
Absolutely, well, we hope not, anyway.
And finally, apart from go out and buy a copy of A Journey in Stone straight away, is there any advice you might give to Master Masons, so people that have already joined and are maybe working their way through the offices, and of course yourself being now in the position of Master, and in just a couple of months' time you're going to be installing your successor? You've almost done the you've pretty much almost got them all ticked off now, so you really are coming to, I would say, to the end of, I wouldn't say to the end of that journey, but to that particular part almost of being a Mason. So any advice for someone going through similar? Not, of course, to myself, because, of course, I'm just getting installed in the chair in 1 week and 1 day.
Yes.
Not that I'm counting.
Oh, it'll be wonderful. No, I would say that there's a lot of emphasis on remembering words and making sure that your ritual is performed well and all that sort of stuff. One of the things I would say is take your time over it. So sometimes people find things really difficult to learn, but I think trying to understand it from your own point of view helps you sort of develop a way of delivery and a way of remembering the words that is needed to be remembered. But also, I think one of the common things it's always said in our lodge, and it's always said to me, and I've heard it said to so many people, is it's so important to enjoy yourself in Freemasonry. It's not necessarily about getting words absolutely perfect.
Sure.
It's not about getting ceremony absolutely perfect. If it's close enough, it's enough. But so it's about striking that balance between working hard to get the work done, but also at the same time relaxing. Yeah. And it's I'm sorry to say that's probably not something you'll be able to do.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to say relax, and it's one of those things easy to say with hindsight, but when you're going into the chair and you've got those ceremonies coming up, I'm sure the nerves will start getting not only to me but to everyone else, and I'm sure it does to anyone who's been through the chair and gone through the offices. Will probably go relax, but you're easy to say with hindsight.
Certainly in my experience, and I'm not sure how it is in your lodge, that if you're going into the chair as worshipful master, I think the most important person in your life is the secretary.
Yes,
because in our lodge, the secretary, I guess I couldn't find my Masonic socks without my
right.
What I mean by that is that he, whatever I need to remember, he's there. In terms of what I need to do and all those sorts of things. So you've got lots of help and you've got lots of support.
There's the support around, and I guess one of the main things is to make sure you enjoy it as well.
Yeah,
I think so that's what everyone's been telling me. Just make sure you enjoy it, and I think when you were saying about the ritual, it's one thing to try to get to be a silver matchbox holder and get it absolutely word for word, but often I think what happens is, and I've heard from so many people that people prefer to be about 95% accurate, but at least convey what the meaning is behind it and show that you've understood it and teach the lessons. And so the person you're doing it on actually understands it as well, rather than just go through like a machine, just reading it out because you've learned it parrot fashion. So
it's all about heart. It's all about putting emotion across and trying to deliver it in such a way as if it's the first time it's been done for the candidate.
Yes, of course it is that, and that's what they're going to take away. That's what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember the words, but they're going to remember how it was put across.
Yes, that's right. Often a candidate will go through a ceremony and you'll say, so what do you think to that then? And they'll just put their hand over their head.
I mean, I've got to remember, I've got to say, I don't really remember my initiation. I remember going to visit another lodge and seeing it happen to someone else and going, did that really happen to me?
Yes,
but that is all the joy of it.
Yes, it is.
So, Craig, well, many thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure speaking to you. As anyone who is listening to it, I know I've said a few times, the book is called A Journey in Stone. It's available through Lewis Masonic and all your usual Masonic retailers. And the easiest way to find it is go to masonicpodcast.com/journey, and I'll set the link up to take you through to that page so that people can purchase that. So once again, thanks very much. Hopefully I want to try and do a bit of visiting, so if I am up in Warwickshire way, hopefully I'll try and pop by and catch up with you. So on behalf of myself and all the listeners to the In the Chair, the Masonic podcast, many thanks for your time, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. So thank you once again to Craig Weightman, author of A Journey in Stone. Thanks very much, Craig. I know you're listening to this today. Thank you very much for giving up some time last week to chat through about your book. Although I mentioned it during the podcast, during the interview, you can find out more about those, everything that we talked about, all the links to the lodges. Just go to masonicpodcast.com/6. So that's masonicpodcast.com/6, the number 6. That will take you through, and that also includes a link to Craig's book, A Journey in Stone. And the easy way to find that, of course, is just to go to masonicpodcast.com/journey, the word journey, and that will also link you directly through so you can purchase Craig's book. I have a copy of it. I recommend you do as well. And as he said, it's not just suitable for Masons, people looking to find out more. It's also suitable for non-Masons who maybe are interested in joining and finding out about his journey. And I'm sure, as you heard, with his knowledge of psychology and his analytical brain of computer science and how he's applied that to the symbolism and the working tools, it is a fascinating read, and I recommend you do pick up a copy. So thank you once again, Craig. I genuinely do appreciate that. And as you also might have heard, when I was chatting to him, I'd referenced that I've got my installation coming up. The interview with Craig was actually recorded last week. As I'm recording this today, this is actually on Wednesday, the day before it comes out, I'm actually going to be getting installed into the chair of Kennet Lodge, my mother lodge. We meet in the province of Berkshire in England, in the UK, and I'm going to be going into the chair of that lodge tonight. So by the time you hear this, which actually comes out on a Thursday, I will have already been installed into the chair, which of course gives the whole meaning behind the title of this podcast, In the Chair. Not only is it a bit of a pun about, of course, I'm going to be in the chair during my time of doing the podcast and hopefully recording my journey and continuing afterwards. It's also that little bit of a pun about how having interviews, people are kind of in the chair. So I hope you like that. I hope you have enjoyed this interview and you continue to download more. If you haven't already, please go to iTunes. Easy way to find it is, of course, just search for Masonic Podcast or In the Chair on iTunes, or just go to masonicpodcast.com/iTunes and hit the download button, hit the subscribe button, and if you please can, rate the show and give a small review on there. It's just on the left-hand side where it says rate the show. That really does help it show up in the listings. So if anyone else is going on, anyone else looking to find out about Freemasonry, Masonic podcasts, they type that in, there's more chance that they're going to find it, because of course this show isn't just for existing Masons. I'm also trying to do this so anyone interested in finding out more can find it, and not only just know about the educational side of it, but about the people who genuinely these people are, and really get across the human side of Freemasonry as well, which I think is something that isn't quite so well documented in books that you can get from the libraries. So I appreciate that. If you're an Android user or a Google user, something like that, you can also do it via Stitcher as well. Just go to masonicpodcast.com/Stitcher, and I genuinely appreciate every single comment I have. I've just set this up. I didn't know if anyone was going to listen to it. It was just one of those things where I wanted a podcast like this. I couldn't find one, and I just got on and made one. And so far, I just seem to have got positive comments, which to me is fantastic, and it shows that there's a market out there and people like you are listening to this and getting enjoyment. So I really do appreciate that. I'm going to stop rambling on now. Of course, once again, I'd just like to say thanks to Craig. Thank you to anyone and everyone who has made those comments. And even if you don't make comments, just knowing that you're hitting the download button, you're having a listen, really does mean something to me. So it's going to be a bit late now, but wish me belated luck for tonight, and of course by the time you've heard this I'd have already gone through, so fingers crossed it all went smoothly. I'll give you an update on how that went next week, but for now, remember, check out the website masonicpodcast.com. make sure you hit the subscribe and the download buttons on iTunes and Stitcher. Have a great week yourself. Take care, and I'll speak to you again soon. Many thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to In the Chair. Visit masonicpodcast.com to see the show notes and in-the-chair.co.uk for more resources to help you get the most out of your Masonic journey. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next podcast. If you're not already, follow us on Twitter at Masonic Podcast.